proposed ESA listings.
Sure.
And the pushback, we hear a lot of talk, but what in reality can be done with respect to pushback?
Sure.
One of the phrases years ago on a totally different subject was just say no, but it's just not that easy.
It isn't. And I'm glad you asked that question, because we need to address proposed listings before they become proposed listings. Let me give you a clear example of this. We had a federal lawsuit that was filed by a group called Defenders of Wildlife against the U.S. It's actually the Fish and Wildlife Service that, instead of the EPA, that administers the Endangered Species Act. They filed this lawsuit not here in Texas, but over in the Northeast. And the Obama administration, who's supposed to be on an opposing side to the Defenders of Wildlife, actually entered into a consent decree. That means that they agreed with them that we should speed up the process for listing species under the Endangered Species Act. Well, that has a direct impact here on Texas. Because we didn't intervene in that lawsuit, because we didn't protect the rights of Texas landowners, and I think that that's something specific the Department of Agriculture should do on behalf of all landowners in Texas, is fight this litigation before it impacts Texas. Because once we have the 100 proposed species for listing in the next 12 months that we have already on the list here in Texas, we've almost lost half the battle. Because now we're having to play whack-a-mole with 100 different listings across the state. And we've had some good work done by prior agriculture commissioners on proposed listings once they become proposed listings. What I'm talking about is being proactive in fighting the litigation before they get a consent decree to ignore the science, ignore the law, and try and push through 100 species listings before the Obama administration's out of power. That's a specific example of what this agency can and should be doing on the big picture of private property rights on behalf of landowners in Texas.
So is that Monday morning quarterbacking saying we can look back and see this is what we should have done, or is that saying that that the Ag Commission did not get blindsided, that they saw it and just refused to act?
Well, I don't know that that was a focus of Commissioner Staples' administration. You know, his focus was on border security and those sorts of issues. He hasn't been as focused on the Endangered Species Act as frankly I would be as our Commissioner of Agriculture. That's something that this agency is what the Commissioner makes of it, and that's something I have real solid experience in, and I will make a focus on, because I know that we can accomplish a lot of good work on behalf of the people of Texas by doing that. Just because we lost that consent decree with the Obama administration doesn't mean that that won't happen again in the future. And in fact, I was at a meeting of we have 12 elected agriculture commissioners nationwide, 11 of which are Republican, one of which is a Democrat in West Virginia. He didn't come. We met back in October, and this is an issue that other agriculture commissioners are facing, not just with the Endangered Species Act, but with in-stream flow issues and salinity and oxygenation issues under the Clean Water Act. And this is something that I think it's important that you have a statewide leader that has those relationships to band together with other Republican agriculture commissioners and be proactive in fighting these actions before they make it here to Texas.
Okay.
You know, Proposition 6 was just passed, and I don't know, people think it had to do with water infrastructure, but you know, it's really just a new bank to loan money. And we asked Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst about it about a year ago. You know, we stated, well, here we've already had to borrow $500 million, which we have through the SGRA. It's our debt. If they default on it because of whatever reason, our county has to pick up that debt.
Sure.
Well, if we got the money, I asked him, I said, well, why do we need yet another fund to get money from? And he goes, well, kind of like what you were saying, it's really for a tax base that doesn't have our valuation we have. Well, then the next question is then, if they can't afford it now, how does giving them a new source of loan going to help them pay that back? It sounds like it's just a backdoor grant, because there's no provision if they default on it. If they default on it, it isn't like the state could go sees anything, it goes to the county, and that's the county that can't pay for it to begin with,
Yeah.
you know? So I guess, my question is, it doesn't look like that's really gonna do anything to deal with access for any of these rural areas that don't have evaluation base to pay for it to begin with. So as Department of Agriculture Commissioner. Yes. What can actually be done about that? Because we're not talking about our area, we don't need the help. What do we do about the rural areas? Other than ask them to move?
No. And in fact, when I was in East Texas, I spoke in Orange last week, and after I got through speaking, we took questions, and one of the people in the audience said, I have a good solution to the water woes in west of here. Why don't we just have everyone move over here,
Yeah.
where we have water, instead of us having to ship the water and not deal with the not have the economic impact of people moving here. Well,
Right.
the reality is people are moving where people are moving in this state. Okay, and talking specifically about Proposition 6. What proposition, that $2 billion, first of all, you have to understand where that money comes from. That money comes from the Rainy Day Fund. The Rainy Day Fund is funded out of severance tax revenue. Severance tax revenue comes out, 25% out of the severance tax revenue comes out of back pockets of landowners in rural Texas like myself, who have oil and gas production on their property and pay that 15% tax in. 75% comes from the oil and gas industry. So it's not some nebulous fund that this money is being pulled out of. It's being
It's not magic money.
It's not magic money. It's tax dollars.
Right.
And at the same time, House Bill 4 eliminated our rural representation, our representation from agriculture, on the Water Development Board. Talk about some representation with our taxation. You know, we need to come back next session and fix some of the problems in House Bill 4. I think everyone in agriculture acknowledges that there are problems with the underlying legislation, that there are some prioritization problems.
So you're talking about the Texas Water Development Board?
That's
right
correct,
now.
Texas
Okay.
Water Development Board. They're tasked with allocating that $2 billion
Right.
that was approved in Proposition 6.
We don't-
It's not ready
They
to
don't
be,
really require much.
well, and
Our SGRA submitted this bill, they just stamped it. They didn't come down here and inspect anything.
Is the elected
So-
board or just the?
It's an
it's
appointed
appointed,
board.
it's
not
an appointed
elected, yeah.
board, and it's been reduced from 7 members to 3 members.
Right.
And we're real concerned about not having a voice in our money being spent. So that's a first principles issue. Second principles issue is we're concerned about some of the prioritization that was put in the bill about how that money's being spent. I'm paying 25% of the bill. I'm only getting 10% back. You know, I'm a little worried about that, concerning, especially concerning the fact that we have the bulk of the new development that could occur in this state in terms of water availability will happen in rural areas. And so those two issues, and then we finally get to the funding mechanism and how that's designed. There is some benefit to it being this revolving evergreen fund because it's not going to be grants. It's meant not to be grants.
Not meant to be grants.
But I'm concerned, just like you are you going to be able to provide that interest buy-down assistance, which is essentially what it's being
Right,
done with this money, in a way that actually, when interest rates begin to go above 1%, are we going to actually be able to buy it down in a way that will actually still be able to be borne by ratepayers who are paying for the increased cost of the infrastructure? You know, we're not always going to be at 1%. And by the
Right.
time this money starts being distributed, are we actually going to be able to do anything with it? And I think especially if you look at trying to prioritize, like I'm concerned that they've done in the statewide water plant, large reservoirs that might take 20 to 35 years to begin being constructed, much less being put into operation.
Right.
Are we really focusing on things, one, that are emergencies right now, number two, that can be done in the most cost-effective manner?
No, the answer to that is no.
I agree. I agree. And I think we have to have an ag commissioner that knows that and can go to the legislature next session and say, we got to get this, this, and this done, and bring the energy sector and the agriculture sector, our number one and number two sectors in the economy, behind the ag commissioner saying, legislature, we need to do it. Because ultimately, you're just one statewide elected official. You have to have support from both the energy sector and agriculture working together. And too often, people try to divide us. And so I think that's a very good question.
Thank you.
All right, why have you chosen to run for Texas Ag Commissioner rather than, say, Texas Land Commissioner or Texas Comptroller?
Well, this is the office where the issues I have a passion on can be impacted greatest. Coming from a ranching background, operating our family's ranch, I've dealt with the water issues firsthand. I've represented landowners who've dealt with these, farmers and ranchers who've dealt with these issues. This is an office that has the ability to take a leadership position on water in a way that, for instance, the land commissioner, who's tasked with public lands, management of the public university fund, it's not part of the portfolio. We already, as we mentioned earlier, help our rural communities with our water infrastructure and increasing
You
the
said it's a
availability of
$50
water.
million?
60.
60.
60. I think it's like 61 in the last LAR, last legislative appropriations request. But we already do that to some extent. But I think let's take the big ticket item and let's work and advocate with the legislature on the policy behind it. And I think I have an ability to do that as agriculture commissioner in a way that the comptroller is focused on taxation, the land office that is focused on the permanent university fund and the lands of the Veterans Land Board, or the railroad commission that's focused on oil and gas, doesn't have the ability to focus every single day, day in and day out, on the number one issue impacting agriculture, which is water availability.
Okay. Yeah.
Now it is, that's for sure.
Bottom line,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay, with your background in becoming a lawyer to help the people that you've helped with the different problems of pipelines and water and so forth, it certainly makes you, if I was looking at it, I'd say, man, you've got the qualifications. You are a rancher. Most everything that the Texas Department of Agriculture does affects you as a rancher. And that's a good thing because you have a passion for that. And you're looking out for your interest as well as other people's interest. But if I was an opponent of yours, I would say, please explain to me how that's not going to be a conflict of interest if you're elected.
Sure. Well, first of all, the first license I ever got was a private pesticide applicator license, before I even got my driver's license, because my dad didn't want to take the test because he wasn't real comfortable with tests and things like that. And so my ag teacher and I went and took the class and took the test. Fortunately, the restricted use pesticides that we used to use are no longer restricted, and some of the ones that we do now, we contract out. So I'm not directly regulated by the Texas Department of Agriculture myself, or our operation isn't right now. And either pesticides or weights and measures, which is the two regulatory functions of this agency. That said, I think it's very important that you have someone who is your agriculture commissioner that has that understanding and that background in production agriculture. Because ultimately, that's what this agency is here for. And having that understanding, and especially coming from rural Texas, it's very important now that we have the Texas Department of Rural Affairs as part of this agency, that you have that background. And I think that having to deal with these issues is a key qualification for this office. I don't think it's a conflict of interest, and frankly, in terms of some of the other opponents who are running for agriculture commissioner are also involved in production agriculture. It's actually a requirement in the agriculture code that you be involved in production agriculture to run for agriculture commissioner. So I definitely don't think, especially with respect to my operation, that there is a conflict of interest, and actually think it's an asset. Brian?
So I would, from my knowledge of you through past, we've crossed paths in the past. So I would say you are conservative, although I would say you tend to be more centralized power versus decentralized power, just from this and just listening to you talk. But my concern of you getting into office would be some of the things that you've done And I'm not familiar with the Joe Strauss, the redistricting and all that, but I do know with your involvement in that. But in my understanding that you did have involvement in that, and that several good conservative grassroots Republicans were redistricted out of office. But the area that I am very familiar with is the Republican Party. You were the legal counsel and parliamentarian several times, and so.
Well, not the parliamentarian. I was
Well,
executive director.
you were assisting the parliamentarian up there.
Yeah, I was
And so-
executive director of the Republican Party when you and a group of others sued the Republican Party in
Well,
2008.
it's correct.
Yes.
Correct. And so that was an effort to get the party to listen to the grassroots Republican people, and it was successfully thwarted. Although I would say the Republican Party was not successful in management of the party because, you know, I'm sitting up there and the chairman, the convention chairman, is desperately trying to get certain things not to come to the floor. Several people are trying to get several very fair things to come to the floor. Some injustices that happened, and so while the party was successful, quote unquote, with squelching the issue coming to the floor in November, the party lost. And that was, you know, the one question I wish I would have asked is like, okay, so how do you expect to not listen to the third of the people in this convention who are here desperately trying to help the party and then expect them to vote for the candidate in November?
Okay. Well, getting to the meat of the, you're referring to the 2008 state convention, where there were a group of people who who had filed a lawsuit against the Republican Party of Texas to try and prevent the convention from following the order of business that we had followed for, gosh, 20, 30 years.
Which is against Robert's rules.
Well, that's the belief of some people, and it's obviously not the belief of the majority of the people in the Republican Party of Texas. You know, this issue has been relitigated year after year after year. And in fact, at the last state convention, myself and Deborah Medina, who was also a litigant in that lawsuit, in fact, the lead litigant in that lawsuit, against the Republican Party, joined hands on the floor of the convention as I was counsel for the Rules Committee. In fact, chair the Resolutions Committee now for the State Republican Executive Committee, and we worked out a solution that I think hopefully made her happy, and we could live with as well. So I think that you know, I wouldn't have taken the approach that y'all took. I believe in working within the system rather than trying to you know, sue the Republican Party in order to do that. And that's a disagreement, you know, that I have with you. But nevertheless, I believe that under Chairman Ministeri, we have had the most voice of all groups, as you saw at the state convention this year. Everyone had their say. You might not win the majority vote, and that's okay, but you still have the ability to have your say.
And I think that was a vast improvement from previous ones.
Yeah, and I support that. But at the same
you
time,
didn't support that in previous conventions.
Well-
You supported the party's leadership effort to squelch the grassroots.
well, I don't agree that your characterization that the majority of the Republican Party was squelching the minority, and I know that there's some people that disagree with that, including yourself.
Right.
But I support our chairman of the Republican Party. When I was executive director, of course, it was Tina Ben-Kaiser. Some people disagreed with her. As member of the officials committee of the state executive committee, as a critical part of the leadership team of Chairman Ministeri, I support him as well. I think that you know, we got through the 2008 convention very effectively, and I think the world didn't fall apart as maybe some people were predicting. But,
Obama won that year.
well, he didn't win in Texas, and we set the stage for, in 2009, when I was executive director, finally take a majority of elected offices in this state that we hadn't done for 20 years. So, I think that maybe we disagree on tactics, but that doesn't mean that we're not Republicans together in the end. I think it's important that everyone work together to elect our Republican candidates in the fall.
We've gone 31 minutes into the questions
Okay.
and answers.
And we've got about 10 minutes left, Dennis.
Okay, well, just a short question to kind of understand better this answer about the TDA's involvement in the broadband services.
Sure.
And you say that the funds are fully expended. Does that mean that that department or program is self-extinguished, or was that seed money that started some program that's going to be self-sustaining, or was that just a pilot program that's poof?
Well, I actually went and researched this issue because I knew that the original funding for this was about $3 million had come from the Recovery Act, the Obama stimulus plan. And Commissioner Staples accepted and pulled down that money, used it for developing this mapping project, and spent it. And there hasn't been, obviously, the stimulus plan money has been spent, and there is no state funding. And I'm not going to support any state funding, or frankly, any pulling down of any more stimulus if that occurs for that. In fact, I'm so interested in where this is right now, because the site's still there. Where is this being
Was
funded?
that just a study program, or is there actually some?
It was just a study. It was just a study in order to catalog where there was access and where there wasn't access. In fact, I was so concerned about it, I talked with the guy who is in charge of Connected Texas, I believe is what it's called, and I have a meeting with him tomorrow at 10:30. So we're going to try and get to the bottom of this and see where it is. I know firsthand some of the connectivity issues we have in rural Texas. I had to rig up an antenna to go 10 miles to Garden City to get broadband internet access over a decade ago to try and be able to do remote access, to try and practice law on our place. Fortunately, we have satellite now to do it. I don't know that is the proper role of state government, providing broadband access to customers. We have a free market that can do that effectively. If I can rig up something myself, I think that there is a business model out there that can support that.
Yeah, that should come out of the Obama phone program.
So that money is, as far as I could tell from the legislative appropriations request, where we go through and see where the sources and uses of money are, is that money has been fully expended.
Dale?
Okay, talking about free markets, the question where you talk about financial assistance to farmers and ranchers with loan guarantees. You cite the stats that close to 20% of all loans guaranteed over the life of the program have been subject to default.
Yeah.
Clearly, the program is not working for the betterment of the state of Texas. Why not eliminate TAFA rather than just restructure it? Let free market work.
Yeah, no, I think that is definitely something we should look at. I don't know that we should be in that business of engaging in further bonded indebtedness, which is essentially what TAFA does. Is it issues bonds in order to essentially reloan that money back out, and that introduces risk that's borne by government.
Right.
And so I am concerned about that. TAFA also administers the Young Farmer Rancher Grant Program, which is not funded through bonded indebtedness. It's actually not funded through tax dollars. It's actually funded through license plate renewal fees for farm tax, where you have your farm truck and farm trailer license plate. So it's a totally self-funded program. That doesn't mean you can't actually take that program and just bring it under TDA, and if you were to get rid of TAFA. It would require a legislative change in order to do that. I expect that there would be considerable opposition in the legislature to getting rid of it. And that's why I answered the question the way I did, because if we can't make that change, then we have to work within what the legislature gives us. Of course, as Ag Commissioner, I'm going to hopefully have a good influence in that.
So would you support that change? Does it
Yes,
have to
yes,
get rid of?
yes.
Where would that opposition come from?
Well, First, I think that there is an issue that how do we deal with the loans that are outstanding? You know, what are we going to do with the book of business that's already been established for this? And how are we going to make sure that we can wash through those? You know, this is kind of the same problem we've seen with the mortgage industry on the federal level. What do we do now? Because we can't just leave the farmers out there in the lurch, and we can't just pay it off, you know, bail out the program. Now, the program was essentially bailed out in, I want to say, the 2011 legislative session. I put the date in there.
Right.
I don't remember exactly what session it was. And Todd was a good part of that. The current ag commissioner was a good part of trying to get this book cleared. So no new, as far as I know, very few new loans have been issued under the program. I would want to freeze that until we can get to the bottom of this. Having worked with the legislature, I know that it's not as easy as just saying, oh, we'll get rid of it. So that's why, you know, we have to try and see what we can do, but until we do so, I think we need to make sure we don't incur any additional risk on the part of taxpayers.
Okay, you speak as a farmer, in favor of, you know, free market.
Mhm.
But it sounds to me like most of the resistance will probably be coming from the farmer community.
It could be. It could be. Especially right now, we have some of the lowest interest rates ever. I think this is the perfect time to try and deal with this issue.
Okay, James.
Now, I'm not a farmer, never have been, ex-military, doing computer stuff, oil and gas right now. But
JP ain't
even where I live, even where I live
Generally,
in
that's-
Chateau, ignore that. Even where I live in Chateau Woods, across the street
Chateau
from me,
Woods, that's
yeah,
nice.
across the street from me, is, I don't know how many acres, but basically they just put a few horses on it. We all know what they're doing. They're wanting to get an
Ad valorem tax
assessment.
exemption.
Yeah, exactly. So my question is there anything to be done about that? Having people that basically aren't using their land for agriculture use that as a vehicle to limit their property taxes, which none of us love property taxes anyway. Or should that be changed to have some other requirement, in which case what could be done?
Well, number one, agriculture in this state, due to the increased ad valorem valuations, due to just the market values going up, agriculture would not be a viable industry in the state if the agricultural land was taxed at market value rather than production value.
Right. But
Okay?
what about land that's not really what it's being used for?
Well, the law currently provides that a appraisal district can review that. You have an appraisal review board at your local level that has the capacity to determine, with the ability for judicial review, you know, if the landowner disagrees, whether that property is properly exempted under the
So should it be 10
agricultural
goats
use.
instead of 2, or there's not really any
Well,
state position on it?
The comptroller's office is the one that deals with this. This
Right.
is not done with the TDA. The comptroller's office has a manual that they try to ensure consistent valuation of property across the state.
But until then, you'll help them with their water issues, because technically, you know, they're agriculture, right?
Sure, sure.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You know, like Brian says, we need some local control here. At the same time, local control needs to actually do the job that
That's
they're
right.
tasked
Yeah,
with.
that's right.
What, in your current position, I kind of want to touch on what's been touched on in the debates that we had. Question came up last night, as well as the other night. What are we, Wednesday?
Jim, last time was the debate.
October
Last night was the 23rd.
Today's Tuesday.
And previous debates about our speakers and your relationship with them. And a lot of the people, basically I've talked to several people, several candidates who like his approach to things about reaching across the aisle, and appointing Democrats. And not necessarily conservatives. What is your position on that, given that grassroots efforts over the last couple of elections have put a supermajority in the state legislature.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was a part of electing a supermajority to the legislature in the 2010 cycle, with some of the work that I did for the Speaker of the House of Representatives and trying to get a Republican supermajority elected, and I'm proud that we were able to do that. First of all, in terms of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Ag Commissioner doesn't vote on that. Two of my opponents who are running for Agriculture Commissioner elected the current Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2009. Both of them, voted for the Speaker. And
who's that?
That's Sid Miller
Okay,
and Tommy Merritt.
okay.
Well, do you think
And-
we have any reason to dislike Joe Strauss? Everybody says, oh, he's a great bud, and
Some people disagree with his leadership style.
So it's just
Brian
a
here
style
disagreed
issue.
with Tina Benkaiser. Ultimately, we have people who disagree. That doesn't make us not Republican.
well, no, I understand that.
And I think we all have to work together, because frankly, a person who has a D behind their name, or who financially supports the Democratic Party, isn't conforming to the ideals that we believe in.
I think it's just limited to the Democratic Party.
Let's say that again.
Do you think that concept right there is just relegated or limited to the Democratic Party?
Well,
All the Republicans hold our ideals.
well,
You got three precinct chairs in here.
and we might have different opinions altogether, but let me make one thing clear, is anybody who subscribes to the Republican banner, in my opinion, is more aligned with me than somebody who puts their banner behind the Democratic Party. We might have more libertarian feelings, we might have more traditional conservative feelings,
Why don't you point at
more.
Brian? I don't understand.
Well, because he sued the party when I was executive director. We talked about it just now. I'm sorry.
Totally misread, but that's okay.
Yeah. And so
Liberty is a good thing.
liberty is a great thing. Liberty is a great thing. But
Along that line.
yeah,
I'd like to hear a definition of what being a Republican is,
Sure.
and then a definition of being a conservative.
Yeah.
well, first of all,
Assuming they differ.
Yeah.
well, no, I think that a Republican might have many species, associated
Yeah.
with it in the family of Republican. You might have libertarian, you might have conservative, you might have moderate, but they all fall under the banner of Republican.
Where
Okay?
would the commonality be, you think?
The commonality, I think, comes to what at least in my opinion, this is
Yeah.
my belief, and I can't speak for
Well,
anybody
I mean, where would
else.
you draw the line that they're
But-
Republican in name only?
Yeah,
Just
that term.
because a Democrat can't get elected.
Sure. And we do have some people that are consistent Democrats who then just want to file and run under the Republican banner.
Exactly.
I mean, I have one in my race right now
Yeah.
for Ag Commissioner that, major donor to Democratic congressman,
Right.
and then never votes in a Republican primary until he wants to run for Ag Commissioner.
And that is which one?
J. Allen Carr. And so we have a difference there, okay?
Yeah.
But let's get back to your question.
Yeah.
Your question really cuts to the heart of what do you believe the role of government is. And my belief, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, and this is what makes me a Republican, is I believe the role of government, I said this, when we spoke earlier down in Conroe, was I believe that the role of government is to protect our God-given rights, life, liberty, and property, and then get out of the way and let the free markets work. Okay. That's my belief of what being a conservative Republican is. Being a conservative Republican also speaks to some of the core issues that I believe, that frankly have motivated me to get involved in the Republican Party. I've always been an advocate for the pro-life cause. It's near and dear to me because I'm the product of a pregnancy where my mother was told by her doctor that she shouldn't have me. Okay? And that's motivated me. She ignored, obviously, put her faith in action. That means a lot to me. That might be a social conservative issue, but I'm also a fiscal conservative as well. So there's different branches of how you do that, and frankly, I think it's kind of like being a Christian. You might have Protestants, you might have Catholics, but we all believe in Jesus Christ as Christians. Okay, that's kind of the concept that directly answers your question.
Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of the questions. And
Okay.
we have up to 5 minutes to provide your closing comments.
Or anything that we didn't bring out you'd like to.
Sure. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and hash out issues with y'all. I really appreciate your questionnaire. This is the most comprehensive questionnaire about this office that really gets to the heart of, where some of the problems are in terms of bloat of this agency, and direct nutrition assistance and things like that we have to address, addressing the water issues of this state, and addressing some of the specific programs that might have failed in the past that we don't want to have fail again, okay? This office is the smallest of our state agencies that's headed up by an elected official. That doesn't make it unimportant. Too often, I think that a good deal of our voters, as we talked about in the beginning, don't see the relationship of this office to them, and then therefore don't vote in this office, vote in this race. I've spent 43,000 miles so far across this state, talking not only to agricultural producers, but more importantly, some of our urban Texans about the importance of this office and the importance of having somebody with the background that I have, taking a serious approach to this office, and making sure that we have somebody who can run a statewide campaign. And I haven't really talked about some of the experience I have had in leadership and building this party in the state of Texas. I come from a part of the Texas that's traditionally Democrat, okay? Heavily Hispanic, heavily Democrat. And since I've been on the State Republican Executive Committee and even before, we've turned a number of counties in South Texas, in rural counties at that, from Democrat to Republican. It's been great for local government. But that experience, that political experience, is also very important. Because we do have two Democrat opponents. We have Kinky Friedman, who people laugh at when they mention their name, but it's a very serious candidate and a very serious threat to agriculture. They said that about Jim Hightower, okay? And he was our agriculture commissioner.
Yeah.
Kinky has great name, better than Wendy Davis name ID. I mean, let's get serious about this. And we have to have a strong candidate going into this general election, because the Democrats want nothing more than to take one office. If we take one office, it begins to snowball. And I think this office is vulnerable in a general election. So I think that experience is also important. But also, like we said at the beginning, doing the job. It's important that we have somebody from rural Texas, somebody who has worked on these issues and get things done at the legislature, whether it be working with the leadership or working with the rank and file in the House to get things done. And then the last thing is that we have somebody who can take that fight to Washington and deal with some of the serious impacts on land use that are impacting urban Texans as well as rural Texans. And no other candidates running for this position among the 5 of us that are in the Republican primary, and then we'll talk about Kinky a bit later. But no one has that combination of experience. And I think it's very important that you all spread the word, as you were doing through this process, to the voters about the importance of this office, the importance of electing someone with the experience that I do, to do a good job in a very important office for the future of the state. But this office is what you make of it. If you don't have a passion for it, then you're not going to be successful in it. I bring that passion. Hopefully I've communicated that passion to you here tonight that I've had ever since I've dealt with some of those issues on our own operation when I was a kid. And that's what's led me to where I am here today. Passion, hard work, and faith in God are what got me where I am. And that's not just in ranching, that's not just in the practice of law, not just in my volunteer political involvement with the Republican Party. And I'm going to take those same 3 principals together. You've seen that with the effort that I've had already to reach out across the state, more than any other candidate, to go and communicate, maybe evangelize a little to people about this office. And I'm going to work as hard as anybody will to make sure that we have an effective Department of Agriculture over the next 4 years, and hopefully beyond. And put some of that passion and rely on God to help me along the way.
Okay, do we,
If I can, just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Seems as though the agricultural department is a stepping stone past kind of.
Has been.
And still is.
Sure.
People, it must be.
Todd's running for lieutenant governor.
It's the stepping stone. How do you see that? Is that what your vision is?
The long-term issues of this office require dedication to this office. You can't get this done in 4 years. I don't plan to be our agriculture commissioner for 4 years unless the voters turn me out and move on to something else. This takes 8, 10 more years. My kids are, my daughter's in first grade right now. Well, I'll be dealing with this office until she gets graduated from high school at least, okay? And that's what I want to do. You're going to have to do that in order to address some of the water policy issues. We're not going to get done next session. We can begin. It took us 15 years on funding the state water plan after they passed Senate Bill 1 to actually do something about it. It takes that time. Guess what? I'm young. I think it's important that we have a great slate of people statewide that are running. George, who's running for land commissioner, he and I were in the same law school class. We have a good young group of people who will lead this party for the next 10 years and beyond. This is a great day for our party this year. It might be difficult for voters to decide between all the races that are up, but we're setting the stage to be able to fight the good fight against the Democratic Party and their policies, not just this election, but more importantly as the state shifts going into the future. So the team you elect now has to have that longevity that I have, and have the experience that I have to actually do the job. And we can think about other offices after we've got the job done, not before.
Quick question.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Include probably some confidential information.